Welcome, warriors and wanderers. We are breaking down the business world, exploring the world of gaming, and strategizing our way through new ideas and perspectives. This is the RedKatanas podcast.
Yeah.
My name is AJ, and I'm your host for the RedKatanas podcast. So, it's been another week, and this is going to be the second episode of the RedKatanas podcast. So, just want to kind of just dive into what we're doing. So, the theme of this podcast is going to be more or less understanding the mindset behind how business operates, how business can bounce between really exciting and really boring and dull, and how to mitigate the two. How to understand how to balance out yourself, that no matter whether the world is tossing excitement your way or whether it's draining the absolute living crap out of you, that you're able to understand and mitigate between those two different polar extremes. It could also be a nice sweet spot for whatever amount of time. But one of the things that I've learned is that life is never a consistent straight angle from bottom to the top as far as working to success, but it always assimilates essentially a heartbeat where everything is kind of up and down, and then it's dull, and then it's up and downs, and then it's dull, and then it's up and downs, and then it's dull. It's kind of interesting how life works that way, where everything's kind of connected in a nice, fun pattern like that. So that is essentially going to be the theme of all of those things. For all the gamers and fitness enthusiasts out there, have you heard about W.GG? It's not just a pre-workout, it's a lifestyle. Whether you're leveling up in the gym or gearing up for an intense gaming session, W.GG has got your back. With their unique blend of energy-boosting ingredients, it's the secret weapon to help you crush your goals. And guess what? They've got some killer merch as well. Check out their website for some seriously cool gear that screams victory. Use discount code KINGSWORK at checkout for an exclusive 10% discount. So sometimes things don't work out the way that you want them to. Sometimes people cancel, people do other things, make times to be able to get things done, and someone doesn't keep their commitment, etc. So got to kind of just roll with the punches. You got to be able to bounce towards your goal no matter what things are coming at you. So in like fashion of being able to adjust how I'm moving, I've actually switched my Instagram handle from the Kingswork _ to now the Instagram handle is going to be Kingswork Live, no spaces, and that's going to be essentially where all the content creation of everything is going to end up being prepared and put on there. So that is that. Got to be able to bounce from expecting things to just understanding that the process is the biggest asset that you're going to end up having, right? It's not necessarily about getting to the end goal, making a certain amount of money, talking to a certain amount of people, having a certain number of people in an audience, or a certain number of followers, or a certain number of listeners, etc. It's who you become in the process, and that's going to be an interesting mindset shift, because I feel like a lot of people are really tied into wanting to set goals, not fully grasping what a goal and a plan is, right? Because people typically they work off of goal setting, which is a really good habit to get into, setting goals, giving yourself something that is further out ahead of you to be able to visualize where you're going. It's an extremely important habit to be able to get into. But I read a book, and it's the book, if you go to kingswork.win, it's one of my book recommendations as the first book. It's Power versus Force. And essentially you can get to a certain point of where focusing on getting to the goal and the analytics of a situation, like the logistical success of I made it from point A to point B, becomes a hindrance to becoming the person that you're supposed to become in the process, right? I heard an interview with a multimillionaire, an insane public speaker. He's a really cool motivational speaker that I really admire. His name is Jim Rohn. I want to say he's passed away now. I'm not 100% sure. But he had essentially gotten some advice from a mentor of his where he was trying to go and make $1 million. And his mentor essentially told him, how about you work on becoming the man that's going to be worth making the $1 million? You have to be the $1 million man, become the $1 million man first before you start chasing an arbitrary number in a bank account. And he said since then, his entire focus was primarily on self development, making sure that he was good. He was in a right state of mind. I'd actually be more interested in diving deeper into his life and in who he became and how he kind of developed himself, because his motivational talks are awesome. They're really cool, a lot of different nuggets as far as mindset goes. But I think people get caught up in the analytical side of, I want to get to point B, I'm at point A. Point B is going to make all the difference. And they miss the point that it's not about where you're going, it's about who you become in the process.
Let's talk business. If you're navigating the challenges of entrepreneurship or looking to take your business to the next level, you need the expertise of Kingswork. With over a decade of experience, Kingswork is your go-to consulting agency. For strategic planning to execution, they've got the royal touch to make your business reign supreme. Visit kingswork.win and schedule your consultation today. Trust me, they're the kings of getting things done.
I've kind of beat that dead horse a little bit more than I needed to. And so that is kind of where it brings us to, time. Some things just don't work out. It's not a roadblock. And again, if you're focusing on becoming the person that your goal requires to be able to get to your goal, then roadblocks are just going to be, they might be a little annoying. They might be more or less nuisances, but you can see them as building blocks to be able to become a different version of who you are. And I heard someone say, where I want to say it was Andrew Tate, where and I want to say he was quoting somebody where it essentially said that you have to kill the person, you have to kill you now to become who you want to be and birth the person you want to be later. So again, that just falls into the whole metaphorical circle of, you got to become a better person. Essentially, you want different results, you have to become a different person to achieve those results. I know, and something I heard the quote, I want to say it was actually Albert Einstein, insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result. So you got to be able to look at yourself, take a little bit of self-reflection is a huge thing that is an important process of becoming a different person, and take that and roll with it and be able to criticize yourself harder than anyone else can. So that way, when other people criticize you, you can honestly just sit there and be like, okay, sounds good. Looks like I need to make an adjustment. Looks like I need a shift here. Looks like I need to change where I'm going here. So that is for that entire mindset of moving through the dull periods. It's not always going to be fun. It's a majority of life is not necessarily fun. A majority of life is going to be the dull periods. It's going to be the not exciting pounding at the pavement. So like I was saying in the last podcast, one of the things that I'm looking at doing is increasing followership on some Instagram pages for content creation, looking at getting some traction on some online courses, which again, if you guys want to get into some online courses for social media marketing agency and YouTube ghost YouTube creator content, I highly recommend going to kingswork.pro. You can get into those courses and the paid community there. Huge asset. The courses are amazing. And I actually have kind of an announcement at the end of this podcast, so stay tuned for that. But the entire point of creating content, a majority of it is you're in front of a screen, you're in front of a computer, you're in front of your laptop, and you're just going from point A to point B. You're just plugging away at everything, and that's a majority of it. Like, it's very little gratifying type of work. That's a terrible way to say that. The work is not super fulfilling, right? It's the end result that you're looking for, not necessarily all the stuff in between. And so if you're working on trying to get to a point of somewhat being successful, you got to be able to go through all of that. It's very important to be able to
pick yourself up and just keep rolling, whether you feel like it or not. Your feelings can't necessarily play a huge part in how you are operating on a day-to-day basis. Things are going to happen. Personal things are going to happen. Family things are going to happen. Work things are going to end up happening. Day-to-day life stuff is going to end up happening. Personal things like vehicle issues are going to end up happening. Problem with rent, problem with utilities. Something's going to happen. Your garbage disposal goes out. Your brother breaks his leg and you need to help him take him to the hospital, or somebody, your brother's or your sister's flying in and you got to be able to pick her up from the airport, and they're not going to, it's not going to jive and mesh really well with the schedule that you made. You got to be able to go from point to point and be completely okay with it, because at the end of the day, it's not that big of a deal if you really take a macro perspective of it, a 30,000 point view, a 30,000 foot view. It's not necessarily about all the little things that can be annoying. It's how you react to all of them. So that is all of that, as far as sometimes things don't turn out the way that you want them to. Let's see. And especially with you working on things that you've put effort into, like you're wanting to get a project done. You remember back in school when you had group projects, you have the one person that's doing a majority of it, the two other people that are doing some of the different like nitty gritty work, because the one person's really taking control of everything, and the fourth person doesn't even show up to class, not even there, but they're still expected to get the same grade as you. So it's at that point you got to kind of analyze, especially when you end up getting into obviously being an adult. You got to understand that the effort that you put into things is never wasted unless you waste it. So taking the example of the group project, if you're the person that's plugging away, trying to understand it all, and even if you're not doing as well as the other person that has a ton of experience in that, the effort that you put into that, you can take that and start magnifying it in a really meaningful way. But it all depends on your attitude towards it, because there's only two things that you can actually control in your life. It's your actions, what you do on a day-to-day basis, and your attitude, how you think about what you do on a day-to-day basis. Everything else is outside of your control. And so the amount of control, the things that you can control and how you control them, really makes a difference on not just what you do, but the people you're around. It presents you present yourself in a completely different light. I don't know, some people are completely okay with presenting themselves in the current light that they're in, and that's okay. You got to be able to let people do what they're going to do. But if you're wanting to move on from the mundane average, I get up, I go to my 9 to 5, or I get up, I'm not saying a 9 to 5 is bad, but you just get up and you go to a job that you don't care about. You're not making any meaningful strides in life as life progresses, because you're only on this planet for a short amount of time, for 100 years max, essentially. I mean, I forget what the average lifespan is, but I think for women it's like 80 and for men it's like 70 something. It's not that much time in the grand scheme of things. So if you're wanting to stay in your position, so be it. But if you're wanting to kind of move on, you got to be okay that 80% of the people do 20% of the work in the world, and 20% of the people do 80% of the work. Now, that's not an exact statistic, but when you look at a room, if you're going to college, if you're in work, you can kind of tell that a minority do a majority of the work and produce a majority of the results, and a majority do a minority of the work and produce a minority out of the results. So it's an interesting concept. It's weird and it's kind of annoying sometimes, but again, moving past that really will help you start making strides towards something bigger and better and more meaningful. So, and that actually brings me to a different point, and I want to kind of hit on this only because my brother and I were actually talking about this probably a couple weeks ago. So my brother had asked me how I'm able to do as many things as I can do. So for me personally, I'm kind of wanting to choose my words a little carefully here, but I'm a single father. I have two children, right? I have a 4-year-old currently and a 3-year-old. I have a full-time job where I'm running federal acquisition. So essentially I'm running a lot of business, back-end business stuff for a federal contracting agency that fulfills contracts all over the world. So as of right now, I'm managing contracts, or assisting manage contracts in Italy. I'm essentially running contracts in Japan, Korea, and Guam. I'm assisting in another contract out in Guam, and then a smattering of other different contracts throughout the continental United States. I'm doing all of that. I'm starting a YouTube channel, starting a podcast, getting into streaming and gaming. You can see all the garbage content that I essentially am making for my Instagram, where I'm basically sucking at video games at the moment. But I'm doing all of those things while still attempting to make a meaningful contribution. Plus, I'm keeping myself physically fit, trying to make myself intelligent. I'm making sure I'm reading. If you see, I have a giant bookcase with probably hundreds of books on it. I've read about 3/4 of them. There's a lot of things that I like to be able to do to make sure that I'm maintaining. I call them essentially the 4 different areas of my life, and I can kind of get that into them in a little bit. But my brother asked me, how do you operate on all of that and think that you can do it? What is your secret to wanting to do it? And my response had to do with my definition of confidence. And my definition of confidence isn't someone that's able to just throw their shoulders back and walk into any room and think that they're better than everyone else. The entirety of my idea of confidence is I have, for 100% surety, without a shadow of a doubt, I have absolutely no reservations about one thought process, is I can figure anything out. I can figure it out. If another human is able to do it, I'm able to do it. There's no chance that I'm not going to be able to do it. It doesn't make any sense that if somebody else was able to go and achieve something, that I can't do it. That makes no, in my head, it doesn't connect like that. So that's my idea of confidence, is I have the unwavering ability to figure it the F out. That's it. And so I use that with everything. I have, even with the hard times that I go through, it just does not stop me. I have no disregard for any of that. And I also play that into, I can move from situation to situation with all the garbage that ends up happening, because life throws stuff at everyone, right? My life, if I saw someone else's garbage and they saw mine, they'd want to keep theirs and I'd want to keep mine. Doesn't matter how bad I can think my life is not that bad. And so I chose a while ago to be able to use that as a positive force. So that was my answer to my brother, and that kind of falls into the umbrella of the topic of comparison. Is, I believe, in my opinion, people look at other people saying that person's better than me in this. That person's taller than me, skinnier than me, prettier than me, more handsome than I am, can do more than I do, makes more money than I do, is smarter than I am, can do more things than I can do, has better parents, has worse parents, whatever. Those kind of comparisons kind of led the phenomenon that I've seen of where people say, don't compare yourself to other people, just do your best. Which I have also taken that and completely shattered that in my head. Is I'm not interested in doing my best. I'm interested in doing anything and everything that I think that I can. And I have, again, I can figure everything out. So if I see somebody else do something, I don't look at them and think they can do it because X, Y, and Z, and they just had a better this than me, and they just had a better that than me. I literally, if I see somebody run a mile faster than I can, my first thought is, okay, sounds good. I can train more and I can actually run that mile. So my mom actually signed me and my brother up to go to Hawaii and run a marathon. So my daughter lives in Hawaii, and I'm going to go to Hawaii in December, and I'm going to run a marathon. Never ran a marathon before. Haven't really been into running. Had to do a little bit of work on my hips and my knees, but I 100% have no doubt in my mind that I can go and beat everyone there. Not because I'm fantastic at running. I love running. I like running. I like the idea of running. It takes somebody with a certain type of mindset to be able to run, but I just don't have the roadblock of thinking, oh, someone else can do it because of this. That means I can't do it because I'm not that. I don't use comparison like that. If I see someone else benching more than me in a gym, I think I'm crazy enough to think that I can go and do that. That's just how I run my comparison game in my head. So that is the main portions, essentially what I wanted to talk about as far as business goes, because I think people get confused that business is about money and business is about knowing people and business is about having a good idea or a good product or being an inventor and creating a product and throwing it out there. Those are surface level points of it, but the surface, that's like the tip of the iceberg, where an iceberg shows only 10% of it, where you can have a giant mass of ice in the ocean and 90% of it's hidden away and 10% is showing. That's 10% of it. 90% of it is your mindset, how you think, who you think you are, and what kind of a person you're wanting to become. And so that's kind of what I wanted to get into in this podcast. That's such an important thing, is mindset. And so I'm actually putting a majority of this stuff into my book just so I can have it written down. And if not for necessarily other people to read, for something that I can pass on to my children as far as mindset goes. Because I feel like that's a very strong asset to have and a very strong habit of thought to have in your back pocket as you're working through things.
To all my fellow creatives out there, have you checked out Nirmata? They're all about bringing those old school vibes to new school gaming, music, and events. Imagine nostalgia of the past meeting the innovation of the future. Nirmata is here to redefine the creative game, explore their unique blend of retro and modern aesthetics at thenirmata.art. Elevate your creative endeavors and stand out from the crowd.
That is the main portion of it. Typically, I'd be going back and forth with a co-host, and then we would get into talking about essentially what's going on in the next podcast. But I wanted to interject a new segment. I wanted to create this segment just because it might give you a little bit of insight into essentially what we're doing and the importance of some of the things we're doing. But the segment I want to do is 3 pieces of advice: a piece of advice for streaming, a piece of advice for getting into business, and then a piece of advice for exploring new ways and new ideas of either getting into business or making a little bit of side money, etc. So I kind of have these all thought out. So the first tip, essentially, first piece of advice as far as streaming goes, is focus on building a community rather than chasing numbers. Engage with your audience, respond to comments, and create a welcoming and inclusive environment. Consistency is key, so establish a regular streaming schedule that your viewers can rely on. You can find that on that's a piece of advice that you can essentially find on any article that you look up, and how to be good at streaming. Network with other streamers, join relevant communities, and collaborate with them to expand your reach. Ultimately, enjoying the process and being authentic will resonate more with the viewers than trying to conform to trends. Be yourself, essentially. Put in the hard work, put in the smart work, but be you, because people are not going to be entertained by you pretending to be somebody else. That is for professionals and actors to do, and if you're going to do that, so be it. But for the majority of us that are not professional actors, that's kind of essentially the direction you should definitely go in. And that is a piece of advice for streaming. Getting into business, starting a business. This is going to be the piece of advice. It's going to be start with a clear and well-researched business plan. If you have any questions as far as starting a business plan, if you go to kingswork.win, send me an email, or you can just send me an email. You just type in info@kingswork.win and ask me for ideas of creating a business plan. Give me a few ideas of the ideas that you want to get into, and we'll kind of go through that. Understand your target market, competition, have a solid value proposition, be adaptable and open to feedback. Such an important piece of anything in business and honestly anything in life. If you want to get anywhere with anyone, if anyone out there is married or has a girlfriend or has a husband, you understand that being adaptable and open to feedback is a very important thing in relationships. As the business landscape, that's coming from a divorced single dad, so that you can take that as what you will. As the business landscape is dynamic, prioritize customer satisfaction and build strong relationships. So one of the things that I actually do with my son is we go through 8 things that we say every single day. One of them is people are the most important thing. Why? Again, people are going to be annoying. People are going to be the ones that hurt you, are going to be the ones that annoy you. People are going to be the ones that make your life harder. But people are what make life meaningful. They're going to be what helps you become fulfilled, right? They're going to be the ones that have your back. So you got to take the good with the bad. That's how the world works. You can't have bad without good. You can't have good without bad. Surround yourself with a supportive network of mentors and advisors who can provide guidance based on their experience. Be prepared for challenges and setbacks, but view them as opportunities for growth and learning. Such a valuable piece of information. If you don't get anything else from this podcast, I recommend remembering this. Be prepared for challenges and setbacks, but view them as opportunities for growth and for learning. So that is getting into business, and then exploring new ways, new ideas of getting into business, or new ways of just wanting to create some side money. Identify your skills and interests and look for opportunities that align with them. Platforms like freelance websites or gig economy apps can be a good starting point. Consider monetizing a hobby or a passion, something you're already doing. Might as well, right? Start a YouTube channel about something that you're interested in. That's why I literally watch YouTube channels and Instagram reels about people that are chopping wood or got into woodworking or decided to invent crazy things like an Iron Man suit. That's what they did. They monetized their hobbies that they had before. Whether it's graphic design, writing, tutoring, creating handmade crafts. Explore online courses to acquire new skills that are in demand. Don't be afraid to test multiple avenues to see what works best for you. Building a diversified set of income streams can provide stability and increase your overall earning potential. Keep an eye on emerging trends and technologies to stay ahead in the ever-evolving gig economy. There's tons of people out there making tons of money doing a ton of different things. It's a lot of this. Majority of what you just heard is about consistency, understanding there's going to be setbacks, and just being able to move from failure to failure with no loss of enthusiasm. So that is the segment called 3 Pieces of Business Advice, or Advice for Business. The announcement that we're going to end up having is I'm going to be going through in the next episode kind of a deep dive into one of the 2 courses. We're going to be diving into the social media marketing agency course. It's going to be a majority of what the next one's going to be about. And we'll get into some tips and tricks, understanding what the market is about, what is social media marketing, and how to create an agency about that. It's a huge, huge market, and people are under the impression that it is a diluted economic niche. I don't think so. Don't believe so. Have experience in definitely not thinking that it is, because I'm definitely have experience in social media marketing agencies, and I have people that are being successful all over the place with them. So that's going to be the next one. The following podcast is actually going to end up being about the ghost YouTube creation. That's a really interesting one where you don't even show your face and you make money off YouTube creating videos. And then the announcement is going to be, we are dropping on kingswork.pro on our paid community, we are dropping the Amazon dropshipping course. That's going to be essentially where you take and market and advertise with Facebook ads. So let's say, for instance, I sell a pen for $10. I bought it for $8. I make that $2 profit and immediately gets shipped from Amazon to the customer. You don't have to touch it. You don't have to make an inventory. You don't have to have warehouses like Amazon. There's a ton of different ways to do drop shipping. I've done drop shipping through Alibaba and done some international style drop shipping with other products. There is pros and cons to doing that. There's pros and cons to doing Amazon drop shipping, but that course is coming out. The release date is still to be determined, so stick around for the next podcast and we'll definitely have that release date ready. That is going to be the finishing touches on the second episode of the RedKatanas podcast. Much love, own your life, and God bless.